When Madeline Hayes discovers she's pregnant, her world shatters overnight. Betrayed by the boy she loved, cast out by the family she once trusted. Alone and scared, she flees to a small town where whispers of judgment follow her every step. But within the ruins of her past, Madeline finds a fragile hope and the strength to fight not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her. In a battle against family, fate, and heartbreak, can she reclaim her future? Or will the scars of betrayal define her forever? The summer sun filtered gently through the lace curtains of the Hayes family living room, scattering soft patterns across the polished oak floor. Madeline Hayes stood by the tall window, her slender fingers nervously twisting the edge of her worn cotton sleeve. At 18, she was on the cusp of everything: hope, dreams, and the trembling excitement of the future. Yet beneath her soft green eyes lay a storm of confusion and fear. Laurel Creek was the kind of town that felt like home to everyone who grew up within its boundaries. Its cobblestone streets wound lazily between wildflower meadows and quaint shops where everyone knew your name. The annual fall fair brought out the entire town, uniting neighbors in celebration, laughter, and sometimes whispered secrets. But secrets Madeline knew too well didn't stay buried in Laurel Creek. Her heart clenched as her mind wandered back to the past few months, a summer that felt like a beautiful dream unraveling into a nightmare. Jake Turner had been the center of her universe. With his tousled sandy blonde hair, mischievous crooked grin, and eyes that sparkled with mischief, he was the boy every girl admired, and the one Madeline believed was hers alone. Their summer had been nothing short of magical. Long afternoons by the lake, tangled hands in starlit fields, stolen kisses behind the bleachers, and whispered promises of forever. Each moment had felt timeless, as if they were the only two people who mattered in the whole wide world. But forever is a fragile thing. It started subtly. Jake's texts became shorter, his calls less frequent. When she asked, he gave vague answers: stress about college, family drama, needing space. Madeline told herself to trust him, to believe in what they had. But doubts took root like weeds, choking her hope. The night she discovered the truth was seared in her memory. She had taken the long route home from a friend's house, the cool night air brushing her face when she saw Jake. He was at the old mill, a place they had once claimed as their secret haven. But he wasn't alone. Carly Bishop stood beside him, laughing with the careless ease Madeline remembered from her summer days. The sight felt like a sudden, violent storm ripping through her chest. Her feet moved on their own as she turned and walked away, silent tears tracing cold paths down her cheeks. She did not scream. She did not collapse. She did not cry out in anger. She simply walked, wandering the empty streets until dawn, the reality settling deep in her bones. The promises Jake made, the forever whispered under that July moon, were nothing but fragile lies, and the betrayal stung sharper than any wound. 2 weeks later, a small plastic stick in her trembling hand confirmed what she had feared: she was pregnant. The 2 pink lines mocked her in the harsh bathroom light, unforgiving and unchangeable. Madeline stared at them for what felt like hours, willing the image to change, praying for a miracle. But the truth remained stubborn and cruel. When she finally told her parents, the house became a battlefield. Her mother, Judith, had gone pale, the delicate porcelain tea set crashing to the floor. Her father, Reverend Richard Hayes, thundered words like disgrace, like sin and shame through the room. Madeline stood silent, absorbing the verbal blows as if they were physical ones. "You're not our daughter anymore," her father spat, eyes burning with fury. "Pack your things, leave this house tonight." That night, with only a duffel bag and $20, Madeline walked away from everything she had ever known. Her once vibrant bedroom now felt like a mausoleum of broken dreams. Posters of her favorite musicians, pictures of smiling friends, and faded ribbons from school plays littered the floor. She paused in the doorway one last time, her heart heavy with grief and fierce determination. The girl who left was not the same one who had arrived here years ago. A lifeline came in the form of her grandmother, Louise Hayes, the one person who never turned away. The late-night phone call was brief but filled with quiet strength. "Come To Maple Falls, Madeline. You'll find peace there. The bus ride to Maple Falls was long and filled with quiet dread. Each mile felt like a heartbeat closer to the unknown, but also strangely closer to hope. Maple Falls was a world apart from Laurel Creek. Nestled between rolling green hills and cloaked in morning mist, it moved to a slower rhythm. The town's soft charm was embodied in its people. Kind smiles, warm greetings, and a sense of community that felt like balm to Madeline's shattered soul. Her grandmother's house was a small, weathered cottage on the edge of town. The scent of cinnamon and fresh bread greeted her the moment she stepped inside. Louise wrapped Madeline in a strong, comforting hug. "You are not broken," Louise whispered, her voice steady and warm. "You're just beginning." The weeks that followed were a slow, tender rebuilding. Madeline found a fragile peace in routines, morning walks through misty fields, afternoons at the local bakery kneading dough alongside Mrs. Jensen, whose warm laughter filled the small shop like sunshine. "You have strong hands, Mrs. Jensen said one afternoon, patting Madeline's flour-dusted fingers. "Strong hands make sweet bread, and even sweeter lives." Madeline found comfort in the soft hum of the bakery's radio and the kindness of strangers who didn't ask questions. Maple Falls was small and news traveled fast. The town knew about her pregnancy soon enough. Some offered pity, others whispered behind her back, but a few extended quiet kindness. There was Elsie, the librarian with gentle eyes, who recommended books about strength and motherhood. There was Theo, a quiet young man who helped stock the bakery's flour sacks and brought Madeline lemon muffins just because. One afternoon, Madeline spotted a flyer at the community center, prenatal yoga classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Something inside her hesitated, but she signed up. The instructor, Marla, was in her 40s, with a radiant smile and scarves that fluttered like autumn leaves. "You're creating life," Marla said the first day. "That's sacred." Madeline learned to breathe through discomfort, to trust her body, and to believe in the miracle growing within her. Each small kick, each flutter, was a beacon of hope. Evenings were often spent in the attic of Louise's cottage, poring over dusty photo albums. Faces from the past stared back. Her grandmother as a young woman, her mother in happier times, and her father before the hardness crept in. "Richard wasn't always like this," Louise said quietly one evening. "Fear changes people, Madeline. But love heals." Those words anchored Madeline when her heart threatened to break again. The first time she felt the baby kick, tears slid down Madeline's cheeks. It wasn't fear that broke through, but wonder. A new life was growing inside her. Proof that even from the ruins, beauty could emerge. Madeline wrote a letter to Jake. She never sent it. It wasn't for him. It was for herself. "You said forever. I believed you. But I believe in myself now, and I believe in this child. That will be enough." Months slipped by. Madeline mastered the art of perfect croissants and learned to tie her shoes despite her growing belly. She laughed more, cried less, and stitched tiny baby clothes with scraps of fabric, each one a promise of love and resilience. Theo became a steady presence, his quiet kindness a balm to her bruised heart. "You're stronger than you know," he said once, sitting with her beneath an ancient oak tree in the park. "And you're not alone." As autumn painted the world in fiery golds and reds, Madeline stood taller. The scars of betrayal and loss remained, but they no longer defined her. She was no longer the girl who had stood at that window in Laurel Creek, shattered and alone. She was becoming something new. One crisp morning, cradling her belly and watching, the fog lift over the hills. Madeline whispered to the life inside her, "We're going to be okay. I promise." Because now, she believed it. The days in Maple Falls unfolded with a rhythm both gentle and relentless. Madeline moved through them, with a quiet determination, cradling the future growing inside her. But no matter how far she traveled from Laurel Creek, the shadows of the past clung stubbornly, whispering doubts and fears that refused to be silenced. Louise's kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and old wood. The morning light spilled across the faded tablecloth, casting soft patterns over a cup of chamomile tea that Madeline held between her hands, warming her cold fingers. "Tell me, dear," Louise said gently, her eyes never leaving Madeline's face. "How are you feeling?" Madeline smiled weakly. "Better, I think. Stronger, at least." Louise nodded. "You're growing into something beautiful, Madeline. But healing takes time." The wisdom in her grandmother's voice settled into Madeline's bones. She knew healing wasn't a straight path. There were moments when the weight of loneliness pressed down like a storm cloud, threatening to drown her. But there were also moments of light. A baby's kick, a kind word from a stranger, the warmth of a home that accepted her without judgment. 1. Gray afternoon. As rain drummed softly against the windows, a knock interrupted Madeline's solitude. She opened the door to find a man standing in the doorway, tall, with the same tousled sandy hair she remembered, but his eyes were shadowed, distant. Jake Turner. Her breath caught in her throat. "What are you doing here?" Madeline asked, her voice steady but cold. "I needed to see you." "To talk," Jake said, stepping inside despite the unspoken invitation. Madeline's heart thudded painfully. "You left. Without a word. Without a reason." Jake looked down, ashamed. "I was scared. I didn't know how to handle everything." She shook her head, the hurt breaking through. "Scared? You betrayed me, Jake. You chose her over me." Tears welled in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me? By abandoning me?" Madeline's voice cracked with pain. "You don't get to rewrite the past." Jake swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Madeline. Truly." For a long moment, the only sound was the rain tapping against the window. After Jake left, Madeline felt the fragile walls she had built begin to crumble. His visit dredged up memories she had tried to bury. The laughter, the late-night talks, the shared dreams, but it also reminded her of the betrayal and heartbreak. That night, she wrote again. This time she folded a letter carefully and tucked it away in her journal. "You came back, but the past cannot be undone. I am not the same girl you left behind. Neither is this child." As the months passed, Madeline's belly grew round and heavy, a living reminder of the life she was preparing to bring into the world. Each kick, each movement, was a promise of hope, but also a reminder of the responsibility she carried alone. She took on more shifts at the bakery, working early, mornings, kneading dough, the physical labor grounding her when anxiety threatened to overwhelm. Her hands were rough and flour-dusted, but her spirit was unyielding. Mrs. Jensen, the bakery owner, had become a surrogate mother of sorts, always ready with a word of encouragement or a warm hug. "Madeline, you've got a fire inside you," she told her one chilly morning, wiping flour from her hands. "Don't let anyone snuff it out." Theo, the quiet young man who had offered muffins and smiles, became more than a kind stranger. He was a steady presence in her life, someone who listened without judgment and offered support without conditions. One evening, they sat beneath the ancient oak tree in the park, the golden light of dusk bathing them in warmth. "I know it's not easy," Theo said softly, "but you don't have to do this alone." Madeline looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough," Theo smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think, and you've already come so far." Despite the peace of Maple Falls, Madeline knew the past was never far behind. Letters from her mother arrived sporadically, each one filled with bitter words and thinly veiled threats. Judith's voice echoed through the pages, demanding that Madeline return home, abandon the child, and erase the scandal, but Madeline refused. One cold afternoon, she sat by the fireplace, reading a letter that burned her heart. "You have disgraced this family. You have shamed your father and me. We will never accept this child." Madeline folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I will not let their hatred define me." Maple Falls proved to be more than just a refuge. It was a community that wrapped around Madeline like a protective embrace. Neighbors brought casseroles, church members offered prayers, and the local midwife, Sarah, provided guidance with gentle hands and wise eyes. "You're not alone, Madeline," Sarah told her during a prenatal checkup. "This town is your family now." Madeline smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future where she could thrive. One crisp autumn morning, as leaves turned fiery red and gold, Madeline felt a sudden, sharp pain. Rushing to Louise's side, she gasped as the contractions began. The night was long and filled with both fear and fierce determination. In the early hours of dawn, surrounded by the quiet love of her grandmother and the steady presence of Sarah, Madeline gave birth to a baby girl, small, perfect, and alive. Tears streamed down Madeline's face as she held her daughter for the first time. "She's beautiful," Louise whispered, smiling through her tears. Madeline nodded, overwhelmed by a fierce, protective love. As the sun rose over Maple Falls, casting a warm glow over the sleepy town, Madeline cradled her newborn daughter close. This was no longer a story of betrayal or loss. This was a story of resilience, love, and new beginnings. No matter what the future held, Madeline knew one thing for certain: they would face it together. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of the small nursery in Louise's cozy cottage. Madeline sat in the rocking chair, cradling her newborn daughter, whom she named Grace. The name felt right, a reminder that despite all the hardship, life had offered her a gift wrapped in hope. Grace's tiny fingers curled around Madeline's thumb, and a quiet peace settled over her heart that she hadn't known in years. Though the immediate danger of her mother's threats had faded, Madeline knew she could not hide forever. The past was not something to outrun, but to confront. One afternoon, she sat down to write a letter, not to her mother, but to herself, to the little girl she once was. "You survived. You are stronger than you ever knew. No one can take away your worth." But fate had another confrontation in store. The letter came abruptly, an envelope stamped with the crest of the law firm her mother's family used. It was a summons, a demand for Madeline to appear in court for custody of Grace. Madeline's breath caught in her throat, fear and anger mingling into a knot in her stomach. She wasn't alone. Louise and Theo stood by her side, their support unwavering. "This is just a challenge," Louise said firmly, "and you have the strength to face it." She hired a compassionate lawyer named Ms. Hernandez, who believed in Madeline's fight for her daughter's future. The courtroom was cold and intimidating, but Madeline's voice was steady as she testified. "I am Grace's mother," she said, eyes blazing with conviction, "and I will do everything to protect her." As the trial unfolded, truths long buried surfaced. Evidence emerged of Judith's neglect and manipulation, and attempts to control the family's image at any cost. The judge listened intently as Madeline's lawyer revealed letters, testimonies, and medical reports showing Madeline's devotion and capability. When the verdict came, it was clear: Madeline would retain full custody of Grace. Justice was served, not just for herself, but for the daughter who deserved love and security. The court victory did not erase all pain, but it opened a path toward healing. Madeline began to see that forgiveness was not for those who hurt her, but for herself. One afternoon, she wrote a letter to her mother. "I forgive you, not because I forget what you did, but because I choose to free myself from the chains of bitterness." She did not expect a reply, but writing the letter allowed her to let go of a heavy burden. Throughout the trial and the long nights, Theo's quiet presence was a steady flame in Madeline's life. Slowly, their friendship deepened into something more tender. One evening, under the stars in the garden behind Louise's cottage, Theo took her hand. "Madeline, you've been through so much, but you're not alone anymore. Let me stand with you, for you and Grace." Tears welled in Madeline's eyes. She squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of a love that promised safety and partnership. Months passed, seasons turned, and Maple Falls became home in the fullest sense. Grace learned to crawl and then to walk, her laughter filling the rooms with light. Madeline found work at the local library, sharing her love of stories and dreams with children who reminded her of herself. She pursued her education again, attending evening classes with the quiet ambition that had always burned within. One afternoon, As Madeline and Grace walked hand in hand through the town square, a woman approached them with cautious eyes. It was Judith. I want to make amends, her mother said quietly. I was wrong. Madeline looked at her mother, the pain still fresh, but the resolve stronger. Maybe someday, Madeline replied gently. But for now, I'm focusing on my daughter and the life we're building. Judith nodded, tears glistening. I understand. Madeline's journey had been marked by heartbreak and betrayal, but it was also a story of resilience, love, and unbreakable spirit. In the quiet moments with Grace, in the laughter shared with Theo, and in the steady support of Louise and her community, Madeline found a truth that no darkness could erase. She was more than her past. She was the author of her future. The sun shone warmly over Maple Falls as the town gathered to celebrate Grace's first birthday. Balloons swayed in the gentle breeze, and the scent of freshly baked cake mingled with the laughter of children. Madeline stood beside Theo, watching Grace take her first unsteady steps toward a new world, a world full of promise and love. Happy birthday, my little miracle, Madeline whispered, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Theo wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his smile full of hope. We have a lifetime ahead of us, he said softly. Madeline nodded, her heart full. For the first time in a long time, she truly believed in happily ever after.